Hi everyone, I'm horror author Kevin J. Kennedy, and tonight I'm going to be reading you a Christmas horror story by J.R. Park. Every year Lex H. Jones gets together some horror authors, and we all send them a Christmas themed horror story. He mixes them up, he sends them out to each other, each of us, and then we read it out online for everybody to watch. I've actually read J.R. Park's work before. I read a book he'd written called Punch, and it was absolutely fantastic. So if you haven't read his work, then I suggest you pick that book up. But here is a little Christmas story. It's called A Christmas Tradition, and as I said, it's by J.R. Park. Kerry was dying. Upstairs in the attic room of her parents' house, she surveyed what was once her childhood bedroom, surrounded by boxes piled higher than she was tall. The young woman did her best to block out the sounds that filled the house, but the screaming was relentless and made her stomach pull tight. Bile climbed her throat in revulsion, leaving a caustic taste that filled her airwaves. Why did they do it? Why did they commit these vile acts of torture? Every year the same video was brought out. The one of her in the choir. Barely in primary school and dressed as an angel, she was caught on camera, singing at singing with her school friends in her first Christmas concert. Kerry didn't need a video to remember the white gown, coat hanger wings and a tinsel halo framing a bowl-like haircut. That haircut was proof her parents hated her. There was no other explanation, and the same hate seemed to continue to this day, embarrassing on anyone that was willing to watch as Kerry's over-eagerness had seen her screaming Christmas carols at the top of her lungs. Her voice drowned out all the others with an accent steeped in her Bristol upbringing, a true West Country, farmer-like twang, flavouring her words. God, she hated them for doing this. Away in a manger, little donkey, we three kings. At 24 she thought this embarrassment would be buried, lost in time. The grainy VHS tape with the label Kerry at Christmas, however, offered no such solace. Every year it would appear, and every year she would grow red and sulk in her old childhood bedroom. Looking through the various boxes of old toys and keepsakes her parents had hoarded, at times like this she was thankful they were unable to throw anything away. This was where the real treasures from her youth could be found, and every year she'd go through a different box or two, searching for forgotten pieces of her past. But try as she might, this distraction was never fully effective at blocking out the mental anguish. Even up the spiral staircase, right at the top of the house, Kerry could still hear her younger self unknowingly ruining her Christmases forever. The tuneless cacophony of I saw three ships knotted her stomach. The embarrassment was killing her. Kerry was dying. Refusing to listen anymore, she tried her best to absorb herself in her task and opened up another box. "Oh cool, Robin Hood," she said, hoping that talking aloud would help her keep focused. She smiled as she looked over the familiar DVD cover, an image of a cartoon fox she'd seen so many times as a child, but one she'd not thought about in a long time. The best Disney film, she told herself, much better than all that princess crap. Another book revealed a Barbie doll and her collection of Sovranian families. The miniature animal figures were once cherished items, and even now she regarded them with fondness. But it was when she opened the third box, one she retrieved from the bottom of the stack, that a long forgotten memory came flooding back. Inside was a blue dress, an item of clothing that she loved, and one she vividly remembered, wearing one particular magical Christmas. It had been cold and the snow had settled outside on Christmas Eve. She wasn't much older than she'd been in the video. Holding the tiny garment up and viewing it in the light, she allowed herself a small smile. Looking back in the cardboard box, she found a quality street tin that had been hidden underneath. The metal box of chocolates had no doubt been emptied of its sugary treats a long time ago, but Kerry had an inkling of what might be inside. Picking up the scratched and battered tin, she took some time to find the edge of the pack. Packaging tape that sealed the lid. A bit overkill, wasn't it, she wondered, before thinking back to how awful her dad wrapped presents. Eventually finding the end, Kerry picked at it with her nails, teasing out enough of a strap to grip between her fingers and pull it free. Opening the lid, a musty smell hit her. It was a smell of old clothes that caused her nose to wrinkle in disgust, but nothing could wipe the growing grin from her face as she stared at the contents inside. His fur was a little dusty and his button eyes were scratched, but his face beamed back at her as if the two had never been parted. Scribbles. She picked up the teddy and held it close to her cheek, just as she had done all those years ago. Elated with her find, she held him at arm's length and admired his scruffy fur. Ruffling the large round ears that sat on top of his head, Kerry sighed for a time gone by. She kissed him in the cheek, then carefully placed the toy back into the tin, placing it aside for safekeeping. Excited by her find, and willed on to search out the next discovery, she dipped her hands back into the cardboard box, searching for more artefacts from her history. A loud crashing sound caused her to stop. Turning around, the tin had gone. Standing over the staircase, she peered down the spiraling descent and caught sight of the overturned tin lying on the floor. The lid rattled again against the wall of the landing, as if it finished rolling and came crashing to a stop. Running down the stairs, Kerry almost fell, jumping the last few steps to keep her balance. Picking up the tin, she turned it over, only to find it empty. A warped reflection of herself stared back from the shiny insides, startling her as she dropped the container. Kerry scanned the landing, but the floor was bare. Scribbles was nowhere to be seen. "Oh dear, what happened to you?" her mum said, ascending the stairs and noticing the upturned tin. "I'm sorry, Mum, I found it in a box. It had Scribbles in. You remember Scribbles? That rascally bear?" Her face was soft with kindness as she picked up the chocolate container. "I've lost him somewhere. Can you help me look?" "Come down," her dad called from the living room. "It's your favourite part. They're just starting the nativity." "Oh really?" Kerry was not impressed. "I'll look for him later," her mother muttered as she smiled and headed back down to watch the video of her daughter, proclaiming that a child of God is born. She still had hold of the tin as she made her way back to the living room, marvelling at the memories it unleashed. Kerry scanned the landing again. Where could he be? She went to call her mum again, but was silenced before she could finish her first word. A hand reached from behind and gripped her mouth, sealing it shut. "Be quiet, child. Don't make a sound," a voice whispered in her ear. Kerry tried to break free of their grasp, but the stranger overpowered her, keeping her hand clamped across the woman's face while gripping her arm and holding her close. "You shouldn't have opened the tin." Kerry tried to speak. "Don't make a sound," the stranger repeated, making it sound like a threat. "We don't know where it's hiding." Her captor's breath was warm against her ear, and there was something familiar about their voice. She recognised it, but couldn't quite place it. Kerry tried to resist again, but a blood-curdling shriek, like the screeching of a breaking bus, halted her struggle. Fear gripped her body, weakening her legs and momentarily sapping her strength. "Quickly, we must go," the voice instructed, with an air of panic. Releasing Kerry and turning to her. "Grandma?" She sounded shocked. As she looked at the kindly but concerned face of an old lady, more cries echoed around the house, drowning out the familiar singing from the video. The pair ran to the stairs but halted as their path was blocked. Rising in front of them stood her teddy bear, Scribbles, only it wasn't Scribbles. The bear was malformed, stretched and pulled so it stood almost 7 feet tall. Its arms and its legs were overtly long and beanpole thin, no longer wrapped in the cuddly texture of soft toy's fur coat. The creature's skin was bare and taut, covering sinewy limbs. Its mouth opened to reveal a set of mismatched teeth. They were jagged and angular, all different sizes, and protruding from its maw like broken metal rods. The one scratched button eyes had enlarged to size of dinner plates, giving a blank stare that was as terrifying as it was emotionless. Even in the well-lit surrounding of the landing, they glowed with a ferocious intensity. It roared again as it lashed out, swiping at them with one of its oversized claws. They both jumped back, but its razor-sharp talons caught the old lady's side. "Follow me," her grandmother ordered, gritting her teeth through the pain as she took Kerry by the hand and ran into the bathroom. Locking the door behind her, the old lady looked around at her surroundings. "Shit," she exclaimed, gripping her bleeding waist. "Wrong room." "What?" Kerry couldn't find the strength to finish the sentence. Confusion and grief mixed within her to form a deliberating cocktail. "We must be quiet," her grandma whispered, trying hard to calm her panic. "That thing isn't your bear. It's not Scribbles. The demon has him now." "Demon?" A muffled roar bounced off the bathroom tiles. The door rattled on its hinges, and the sounds of grunting and snuffling filtered through from the other side of the woodwork. The pair leant against the door, trying their best to keep the beast from compromising their barricade. "Yes, my child," her grandma continued. When she was satisfied, she had her shoulder as hard to the door as she could. "A demon? It came for you one day. We don't know why. No one could offer us an explanation. No one could tell us why it had to be you." A tear formed in her eye, and she was reminded of a fearful past. All we knew is it wouldn't stop. It just kept coming. Kerry felt the door shake, almost knocking her from her feet. Startled at first, she pushed back harder, determined to keep the monster at bay. "But why don't I remember any of this?" she asked, perplexed at this new information about her past. "You were young, you must have blocked it out." "But you stopped it?" Kerry asked. "We didn't stop it exactly," her grandpa replied. "We just kept." The old woman was cut off mid-sentence as the demon's claws burst through. She fell to the floor as the thing that was once lovable, old Scribbles, forced its way into their sanctuary and leapt on top of Kerry's grandma. Kerry tried to beat the monster away, but was thrown to the landing. The creature greedily licked its lips before sinking its misshaped teeth into the old lady's shoulder. She howled in pain as blood sprayed across the bathroom tiles. Another savage maul saw her left arm severed at the elbow. The demon's mouth dripped with crimson liquid as it dug its claws into the soft wrinkled skin of her back. The pensioner writhed under the beast, kicking and screaming in agony, but the monster was too powerful. Climbing to her feet, Kerry was numb with shock as she watched the atrocity unfold before her eyes. Her grandma turned to face her. "Run, my dear," her voice gargled in her own blood. "Run." Kerry stood on shaky legs and bolted for the stairs, but the creature was already hot in her tail, leaving the old woman to slowly bleed out. The demon hunched on all fours and galloped towards her like a charging grizzly. Feeling her pursuer gaining, Kerry knew she had no chance of making it to the stairs before it caught her. She had to find cover. She had to get something between her and it. Diving into her parents' bedroom, she slammed the door, but the monster demolished it as if it was hardly there. Trapped and cornered, Kerry desperately searched for a way out. She tried the window, but her unsteady hand shook with adrenaline and failed to grip the latch enough to pull the lock from its fitting. Instinctively, she bolted towards another door, ran through it and slammed it shut behind her. Sinking to her knees, Kerry held her breath in the darkness of the wardrobe. She could do nothing but wait and listen to the drumming of her own heart. It filled her thoughts as she hid between the hanging contents of coats and dresses. The stillness was broken by a nerve-shredding scream. She recognised it as the monster's. It howled and yelped before the sound of its canter grew fainter and more distant. Kerry didn't know what to do, and so for a moment she remained motionless, listening out for signs of the demon while trying to catch her breath. A fear-dried throat made it difficult to swallow, and her pulse refused to slow. Carefully she opened the wardrobe and peered around the door. The bedroom floor was covered in fragments left in the aftermath of the demon's destructive rampage, wood chips and splinters littering the carpet. Kerry wanted to shout to call out to her parents and warn them of the danger, but she was too terrified that the thing might come back. Where had it gone? Kerry gently closed the wardrobe and caught sight of her reflection in its outer mirrored surface. Had that made the monster scream and run, its own reflection? She thought back to where she found it in the quality street tin. The insides were reflective, forcing the demon to stare at its own image no matter which way it turned. Was that how they kept it contained, trapped and subdued by the hellish vision of its own horrific self? Tiptoeing across her parents' bedroom, Kerry looked into the hallway. Huge red marks, bloodied paw prints, tracked across the beige shag pile circling around the landing and heading downstairs. Good God, no. The sound of the worn VHS tape was still blaring from the living room. A child explained there was no room at the inn. Nervously edging down each step and turn, Kerry glanced back and forth, expecting the demon to lunge from its hiding place at any moment. She tried her best to avoid gazing into the bathroom, but her stomach turned as her eyes couldn't help but lock onto the ravaged pile of meat that was once her grandmother. Terror held back her tears, stifling her grief as she continued her descent. Creeping across the hallway, she followed the footsteps as they trailed along the passage, then turned towards the living room, holding her breath. Kerry clung to the doorframe and edged round it to get a clearer look. The television flickered with a grainy footage of a group of children stood on a stage and with tea towels in their heads, a baby doll lay in a wooden crib, and as the children stood around, three presenting pretend parents with gifts, her own parents were sat in their usual armchairs, nonchalantly watching the home video. Had they not heard all the commotion? Did the volume of the film really drown all that out? Kerry scanned around for the bear, but the room looked devoid of its demonic presence. The footprints stopped at the door. Did it just disappear? A low rumble above her head told her exactly where the monster was. Looking up, she had just enough time to see it clinging to the ceiling. Its claws dug firmly into the plaster before it launched itself at her. Diving out of his way, Kerry fell into the living room, landing between her parents and the television. "Mum, Dad, you've got to run," she screamed. Her parents ignored her, glued to the nostalgic images on the screen. The beast rose on its hind legs and gripped the doorframe, lowering its head to make it through the entrance. It snarled as it regarded its prey. Drool dripped from between its misaligned jutting teeth, the tusk-like canines glinting in the glow of the television. Kerry tried to climb to her feet and make a break for it, but the demon lurched forward, striking her face with one of its claws. She fell to the ground, her face pouring blood as it streamed from the gashes across her cheek. She watched the claret-coloured liquid drip onto the floor as she found the dizzy aftermath of the sudden attack. Forcing herself to her feet, she spun round, trying to keep her balance. The monster swiped at her belly, its claws right through her flesh, opening up her stomach. She fell backwards and held her wounds, trying to stop the blood gushing from her body. Looking up at her parents, she was shocked to see them still impassively sat in the same positions. "Mum," she called as the demon stood over her. Its big eyes like headlights from a bus peered down at her. The monster hunched on all fours, lowering its head so it was only inches away from the wounded woman. "Help me," Kerry called out, but her parents didn't move. Their eyes looked through the pair, trained on the television. As the monster sunk its teeth into her side, a glinting object caught her gaze. Instinctively she kicked out, pushing the monster away. For a moment, giving her enough time to turn to see what was flashing in her peripheral vision. It was a Quality Street tin. Wounded she may be, but now she found her weapon. The same one her grandma must have used all those years ago. The tide was turning. The beast could be trapped. Reaching out, she stretched for the tin. Her fingers caught hold of the metal container just as a claw struck her arm. The attack sliced through her bicep, severed bone and flesh alike. The tin fell to the floor, splashing in a pool of blood, followed by the vomit-inducing thud as her separated limb did the same. Kerry stared at a still twitching hand, shock reducing the pain to a numbing buzz that filled her head. Turning to face her attacker, she watched as another swipe of its lethal claw came flying towards her, raking at her jaw. It destroyed the lower part, snapping it in two across the gum line and tearing it from her face. Kerry tried to call out, but her tongue swung uselessly beside the hanging fragments of skin and teeth that remained of her mouth. Blood bubbled up from her throat as the monster roared with a terrifying sound like that of screeching tyres. Its skin shone red and its breath smelt like diesel. Its headlight eyes shone brighter the closer they grew. Burning rubber filled the air and the sound of screaming passengers reminded her of snow. She looked down to see she was wearing her favourite blue dress, the one she'd found in the attic. Her back felt cold as snow soaked into her skin and scribbles looked up at her, the faithful toy clutched in her hand. Kerry closed her eyes, unable to watch as the blood-splattered demon reached back and struck once more, aiming at her throat, the final death blow. Gasping for breath, she felt the worm of her own blood as it poured down her neck. Unable to fill her lungs with air, she watched the room around her grow dark. Kerry was dying. Janet Francis picked up the Quality Street tin and placed it back on the coffee table. "Must be the ghost," her husband half joked. "Oh, come now, don't be stupid," she retorted. "How else do you explain it?" Jeff asked. "Every year it's always the same when we put the video on. Every Christmas the tin and the bear. How else do you explain all that banging around?" "Pipes," Janet replied. "Pipes and false hope. The baby was taken away from us at such an early age." "Your sister said she saw her here once," he cut in. "My sister has always been a bit of a Fruit Loop," Janet rebuffed his comment. "Anyway, she said she saw a woman in her 20s, maybe ghost age." I don't know how it works." Jeff sat back and thought for a moment, stroking his chin as he allowed his mind to drift. "She'd be about that age now." 24, Janet cut in, slightly hurt that her husband hadn't known the answer instantly. He relaxed back into his chair, allowing the comfort of the luxurious upholstery to envelope his shoulders as he snacked on an after 8 mint. "Maybe you should have buried the bear with her. She was holding it when the bus, well, you know." "Maybe I should have," Janet snapped, wiping the collecting grief from her eye. Even after all these years, the pain of losing her 6-year-old daughter in a motor accident had not dulled, but it was her most treasured toy. Do you remember that Christmas? The snow? I wanted to keep that memory. She paused for a moment, holding a thought of comfort in her head. Her little girl's in heaven now. You're right, Jeff could sense a growing agitation in his wife. I was happy to steer the conversation to a more comforting territory. Your mother loved her so much. She'll be up there keeping an eye on her. Hush now, Janet spoke, her voice soft and calming as she focused on the choir as they prepared for their grand finale. I want to watch this. I want to remember my beautiful daughter. The end. So, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that. If you do, when it's on YouTube, comments and likes, and hopefully Lex Jones will keep putting these together each year. As I say, each year we random authors are involved and different authors get each other's stories, so it's worth checking them out. Find some new authors you like, find some new stories. I hope you enjoyed it.